enjoying the insights and value from my content, I've got something even better for you. A weekly newsletter that dives even deeper. Each edition is packed with exclusive tips, personal stories, and practical advice that I don't share anywhere else. Think of it as your VIP access to strategies for growth, motivation, and self-mastery. Plus, you'll be the first to hear about new projects and get special content crafted just for subscribers. If you're serious about leveling up, don't miss out. Join the newsletter and let's make each week more impactful together. Link is in the description below. Okay, let's get started. Reason number 1. You talk too much about yourself. Imagine this. You're at a dinner with friends, the kind where everyone's unwinding, catching up on life. Before long, you're telling them all about your latest project, your weekend plans, maybe even your newest frustrations. You're on a roll, and it feels like you've got so much to say. But then, halfway through, you notice something. You're doing all the talking. Your friends are nodding, but they're not as engaged as you thought they'd be. They're giving those polite smiles, glancing at their phones, maybe even exchanging looks with each other. In that moment, it hits you. You've turned what could have been a shared conversation into a monologue. I know this feeling well because for a long time I was that person. I thought that by opening up and sharing more, I'd create a stronger bond with people. I'd tell myself, they care about me, so of course they'll want to hear all about my life. But gradually, I noticed something was off. Friends would look restless during our conversations, or they'd excuse themselves earlier than usual. And then one day, a close friend gave me some gentle but much-needed honesty. I love hearing about your life, but sometimes it feels like you don't leave room for anyone else's story. That simple truth stayed with me. It hurt at first. After all, my intentions had always been to connect with others, not alienate them. But looking back, I realized my friend was right. I'd been so caught up in sharing my own experiences that I'd forgotten to listen, to ask, to make space for others to express themselves. In my mind, I thought I was bonding, but in reality, I was dominating. My words filled the air, but they left no room for anyone else's voice. The deeper truth: conversations as shared space. When we make conversations all about ourselves, even unintentionally, it sends a message that we think our stories, our achievements, and our struggles are more important than theirs. Even when friends genuinely care about us, they need room to be heard too. Relationships are about balance, and when we tip that balance, we create silent resentment. Slowly, we might find people distancing themselves, not because they dislike us, but because they feel unseen in our presence. Listening, on the other hand, is a powerful act of respect. It shows others that we value their lives, their struggles, and their joy just as much as our own. When we take the time to ask, "How have you been?" and genuinely listen, we open doors for deeper connection. By simply holding space, we show that we care, not just about our own story, but about theirs too. What I learned when I started listening more. When I decided to shift my focus and start truly listening, everything changed. I began to realize how much I'd been missing: stories, emotions, even struggles my friends were going through, but never got the chance to share. I noticed that when I asked thoughtful questions, people would light up. They'd tell me about parts of their lives I'd never known, struggles they were facing, or little victories that meant the world to them. And the more I listened, the closer we became. Conversations stopped feeling like performances and started to feel like shared moments of connection. Listening taught me that relationships aren't just about what we say, but also about the silent acknowledgement of someone else's world. By giving them space to express, I was offering them something far more meaningful than my own anecdotes, a chance to be seen and valued. Over time, I realized that the people I admired most were the ones who were genuinely curious about others, who would lean in, ask questions, and remember the little details. They left people feeling uplifted, respected, and heard. The takeaway: to speak less, listen more. The irony is, the more I spoke about myself, the more distant my relationships became. But when I started to listen, I gained a deeper understanding, a closeness, and a mutual respect that wasn't there before. Talking less doesn't mean caring less. It means caring in a way that prioritizes connection over self-expression. In the end, if you want people to genuinely enjoy your company, try speaking a little less and listening a little more. Put yourself in their shoes, ask about their lives, and be there to celebrate, to empathize, and sometimes just to sit in shared silence. You'll find that these moments of quiet respect do more for your relationships than any long story ever could. Reason number 2, you one-up everyone. We've all had that friend who, no matter what you're going through, always has a better or worse story. You mention a tough week at work, and they've had a harder one. You talk about a recent trip you loved, and they've already been somewhere more exotic. It's not that they're trying to undermine you, but it feels like they just can't let you have the moment. If this sounds familiar, you might be surprised to learn that once upon a time, I was that friend. I'd add my own experiences to the conversation, thinking I was bonding, but in reality, I was turning every moment into a competition. Here's how it would usually go. A friend would tell me something personal. Maybe they'd had a rough day or were struggling with a decision. And somehow, instead of letting the conversation stay focused on them, I'd jump in with my own similar story, unintentionally shifting the spotlight. I'd say things like, "Oh, I totally get it. Just last week I went through the exact same thing." Or, "I've actually dealt with something even worse." I'd believed that by relating my own experience I was showing empathy. But to my friends, it felt like I was trying to outshine or minimize what they were going through. One day, a friend finally called me out on it. They said, "Sometimes I just want to share something without feeling like I have to compete." That hit me hard. I realized that by constantly turning every story into a comparison, I was invalidating their experiences, making them feel smaller when they came to me for understanding. Why we fall into the one-up trap. Sometimes we fall into this habit because we genuinely want to connect. We think that by sharing our own similar experiences, we're showing empathy, saying, "Look, I understand what you're going through." But empathy doesn't mean having a better or worse story to tell. It means being present in the moment and allowing others to feel valued and heard. When we constantly one-up people, it suggests that their experiences are less meaningful than ours, that what they're going through somehow matters less because we've been through something more intense. At the core, the need to one-up can stem from insecurity or a desire to feel important. We want our experiences, our feelings to be validated, so we search for ways to put ourselves in the spotlight. But this habit doesn't build closeness. It creates distance. Friends and loved ones come to us not to be overshadowed, but to feel understood. What happened when I stopped one-upping? After that conversation with my friend, I made a conscious effort to stop turning every discussion into a comparison. Instead of jumping in with my own stories, I tried to listen without responding with something about myself. I'd say things like, "That sounds tough, tell me more about it." Or even, "How did you handle that?" This shift wasn't easy. I had to fight the urge to add my own experience, to let them have their moment fully. But over time, I noticed something incredible. People opened up to me more. They shared details they never had before, and our conversations grew deeper and more meaningful. I realized that by allowing others to express themselves without feeling overshadowed, I was giving them a rare gift, the freedom to be heard without judgment, comparison, or competition. And in turn, they valued my presence more because I had become someone they could trust to listen genuinely. Instead of draining our interactions with my need to relate, I became a sounding board, someone who offered support without conditions. The deep message, letting others shine. In relationships, sometimes the best way to show up is by stepping back. When we give people the chance to tell their story without feeling that they have to measure up to ours, we validate their unique journey. It's a subtle way of showing respect, saying, "Your experience matters, and I'm here to listen." Letting others shine doesn't make us less important. In fact, it often makes us more valued in their eyes. When people feel that they can share without fear of competition, they trust us more deeply. They see us as someone who brings peace to the conversation rather than tension. And over time, this quiet respect builds bonds stronger than any relatable story ever could. The takeaway: connection, not competition. If you want to strengthen your relationships, try resisting the urge to one-up. The next time someone opens up, let them have their story fully. Nod, ask questions, and give them your undivided attention. Hold back your own experiences for a moment and let theirs take center stage. You'll find that people remember these moments not because you shared something extraordinary, but because you allowed them to feel extraordinary. True connection isn't about comparing notes or proving we understand. It's about creating a space where others feel valued for who they are, without conditions or competition. Letting others shine doesn't dim our light. It only makes the room we share that much brighter. Reason number 3, you're always right. Think about the last time you were in an argument. Maybe it was a debate with a friend, a heated discussion with a family member, or a disagreement at work. Did you find yourself tirelessly defending your point, convinced that if you just explained it better, they'd finally see things your way? That if they could just understand your perspective, they'd admit you were right? If so, you're not alone. I used to be that person too. For years, I felt this constant urge to prove my point, to make sure everyone around me knew I was right. In my mind, I thought I was doing a service. I believed I was enlightening others, bringing them to the truth. I even told myself it was a form of honesty, that I was being genuine and bold. But looking back, I can see how misguided I was. What I thought was helpful was, in fact, pushing people away, making them feel like their opinions didn't matter. One night, after a particularly long and unnecessary debate with a friend, I noticed something in their expression, a look of exhaustion, maybe even frustration. I had won the argument, but I hadn't really won anything. I'd gotten my way, but at what cost? My friend wasn't enlightened by my rightness. They were tired of it. That's when it hit me. My need to be right was hurting my relationships more than I could see. Why we get so caught up in being right? This need to always be right often stems from our ego. We equate being right with being respected, with being important. There's this strange satisfaction in proving our point, in convincing someone to think the way we do. It feels like a win, like validation. But what we fail to see is that the need to be right comes with a heavy price. When we insist on our point of view above all else, we subtly tell the other person, "I value my opinion more than I value you." It's as if we're saying, "Your perspective is wrong, and until you adopt mine, we're at odds." I remember once in a family discussion, I argued relentlessly about a trivial issue, something that didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. My family member eventually gave in, not because they agreed, but because they were tired of arguing with me. And that's when it hit me. I might have been right, but I had trampled on their voice to get there. I had won the discussion, but lost something much more valuable: their trust, their openness, maybe even their respect. The impact of always being right. Constantly needing to be right creates a wall between us and others. When people feel that they can't openly express their ideas or feelings without being shut down, they start to withdraw. Conversations become surface level because they know that any disagreement might lead to yet another debate. Over time, they may avoid deeper topics altogether, knowing that we'll only accept their thoughts if they align with ours. The reality is, people aren't looking for someone who's always right. They're looking for someone who's willing to listen, someone who values their perspective. When we're obsessed with being right, we dismiss other people's insights, experiences, and emotions. We overlook the fact that they too have lived experiences that shape their opinions. And by ignoring their viewpoint, we lose the chance to see things from a new perspective, to grow from understanding a different side of the story. What I learned when I let go of being right. Letting go of this need wasn't easy. I had to unlearn years of thinking that being right was the most important thing in an argument. I remember one conversation with a friend where, halfway through, I felt myself getting defensive. I could feel that urge to correct them rising, but instead of jumping in, I paused and decided to just listen. I resisted the temptation to counter every point they made, and instead I asked questions. I tried to understand their side, to see the issue from their perspective. In that moment, something shifted. They relaxed, became more open, and we actually connected on a deeper level. By letting go of my need to be right, I gained something far more valuable: insight, respect, and genuine understanding. I learned that people don't need us to be right. They need us to be present, to show them that we respect their perspective, even if we don't agree with it. The deep message: prioritizing connection over correctness. The irony is, the more I let go of the need to be right, the more peace I found within myself. I realized that true confidence doesn't come from proving others wrong. It comes from being secure enough in our own beliefs that we don't need others to validate them. The people who truly have an impact are the ones who can sit in a room full of differing opinions, genuinely listen, and say, "I respect that." Reason number 4. You gossip behind their back. Gossip can be addictive. It's tempting, a guilty pleasure we often justify by saying, "I'm just venting," or "it's harmless." But deep down, we know that gossip carries weight, and it has a way of affecting our relationships in ways we might not see at first. I remember a time when I thought gossiping about someone was a form of bonding with others. I thought it was just sharing facts or blowing off steam. But over time, I realized that even small remarks made behind someone's back could damage trust and ruin connections. Here's how it started for me. I would meet up with friends, and inevitably, the conversation would veer toward mutual acquaintances. "Did you hear about what happened with her job?" Or, "Can you believe what he said?" It seemed harmless at first, just sharing details that we all knew. But then it grew, and I found myself adding my own opinions, exaggerating certain details for effect, or nodding along to stories that painted others in a less than flattering light. I'd walk away from those conversations feeling a mixture of thrill and guilt, knowing that if the tables were turned, I wouldn't want others talking about me like that. Why we gossip, and why it's so damaging. Gossip often stems from insecurity. We gossip because on some level it makes us feel better about ourselves. By discussing someone else's flaws, mistakes, or personal details, we feel a temporary boost in self-worth, as though highlighting someone else's issues somehow diminishes our own. But this high is fleeting, and the consequences are lasting. When we gossip, we send a clear message to others. If I'm willing to talk about them behind their back, I'll likely do the same to you. People pick up on this. They know that a person who gossips cannot be fully trusted, even if they don't say it outright. If they hear you talking about a mutual friend, they'll wonder what you say when they're not around. Over time, they'll start to keep their guard up around you, sharing less, connecting less. The bonds of trust slowly erode, leaving only superficial connections behind. One of my closest friendships almost fell apart because of gossip. I'd made a habit of discussing minor issues I had with this friend to others, thinking it was harmless, just a way of venting when I was frustrated. But one day they found out what I'd been saying. Their hurt was palpable. They felt betrayed, as though every private conversation we'd had been made public. It took months to rebuild that trust. I realized then that every time I'd gossiped, I'd been chipping away at the very foundation of that friendship. It was like slowly dismantling a bridge, piece by piece, until nothing was left but suspicion and hurt. The impact of gossip on relationships. Gossip doesn't just hurt the person you're talking about, it hurts the people you're talking to as well. When we gossip, we create an environment where negativity thrives. Conversations become more about judgment and less about connection. Instead of lifting each other up, we bond over someone else's struggles or mistakes. This negativity spreads, creating an atmosphere where people feel they have to watch their words and actions. People become less open, less trusting, because they fear that anything they say might become the next topic of discussion. In a professional setting, gossip is even more destructive. A workplace where gossip is common quickly becomes toxic. Employees no longer feel safe, and the team loses its sense of unity. People start looking over their shoulders, wondering who's talking about whom, and morale plummets. Productivity drops, and the gossipers, though they may feel a momentary sense of power, are often left isolated and distrusted. What happened? When I stopped gossiping, I knew I had to make a change if I wanted real, trusting relationships in my life. So I made a conscious effort to stop gossiping. It wasn't easy at first. Old habits die hard, and I still felt the urge to vent or share what I'd heard. But every time the temptation arose, I'd remind myself of the hurt I'd caused in the past and the damage I'd done to relationships that mattered to me. Instead of gossiping, I started redirecting conversations. If a friend began talking about someone else's life, I'd steer the conversation towards something positive or personal, something that would build connection rather than tear someone else down. And slowly, I noticed a shift. My relationships grew stronger. People began opening up to me more, trusting me with their thoughts and feelings, knowing that I wouldn't turn them into fodder for the next conversation. I realized that without gossip, conversations became deeper and more meaningful. Instead of focusing on others' flaws, I began learning more about the people around me, about their dreams, struggles and fears. I found myself connecting on a genuine level without the negativity that gossip had brought into my life. The deep message, respecting others' absence. One of the most powerful lessons I've learned is that respecting others when they're not around is a sign of true integrity. It's easy to be kind and respectful to someone's face. The real test of character is how we talk about them when they're not there. When we choose to honor someone's reputation and privacy, even when they're not there to hear it, we show that our respect isn't conditional. It's a commitment to treating people with dignity, no matter the circumstances. By resisting the urge to gossip, We foster an environment where people feel safe and valued. When others see that we don't engage in gossip, they know they can trust us fully, that they don't have to worry about what might be said behind their back. This trust is rare, and it's a gift that strengthens every relationship we have. The takeaway: elevate the conversation. If you find yourself tempted to gossip, ask yourself, is this bringing me closer to the people around me, or is it creating distance? Gossip may give a fleeting sense of connection, but it's an illusion, a fragile bond built on negativity. Instead of gossiping, try elevating the conversation. Focus on what's positive, on what brings people together, rather than what divides them. Be the person who inspires others to rise above petty talk, who shows that conversations can be both uplifting and real. Reason number 5. You only reach out when you need something. We've all been there. Life gets busy, schedules are packed, and we go for months without checking in on people who were once close to us. But what's worse is when the only time you find yourself reaching out to someone is when you need something from them. Maybe it's a favor, advice, a contact, or just someone to vent to in your own moment of crisis. It's a habit we don't even realize we're forming until it's too late, and people start pulling away, sensing they're only valued for what they can give, rather than who they are. This hit me hard once when a close friend gently called me out on it. I hadn't spoken to them in weeks, maybe even months, and the last few times we talked had all started with me needing something. They weren't angry, but there was a quiet hurt in their voice when they said, "Sometimes it feels like you only talk to me when you need help." That stung. I hadn't even noticed I'd been doing it, but I'd fallen into a pattern of reaching out when it was convenient for me, without thinking about how it might feel on the other side. The effects of conditional friendships. When you only reach out to someone when you need something, you create a transactional relationship, one that feels more like a business exchange than a genuine connection. People notice this, even if they don't say anything. They start to feel used, undervalued, and eventually they'll stop answering calls or responding as warmly as they used to. No one wants to feel like they're simply a resource, a backup plan, or an emotional sponge. Relationships are supposed to be a two-way street, a balance of giving and taking. If you're always the one asking and never the one giving, that balance collapses. Imagine if someone only checked in with you when they needed advice or help moving or a place to stay. At first you might brush it off, but over time you'd start to wonder if they cared about you at all. Do they appreciate you for who you are, or are you just a convenient solution to their problems? That's exactly how it feels when we're the ones reaching out only in times of need, whether we intend it or not. What this says about our priorities. Reaching out only when we need something often stems from an unconscious habit of prioritizing our own needs above the value of the relationship. It's an easy trap to fall into, especially if we're juggling a busy life with lots of responsibilities. But here's the thing. The people in our lives aren't just supporting actors in our story. They're the main characters in their own stories. They have their own ups and downs, needs and moments of loneliness or struggle. When we only show up in their lives because we need something, it sends the message that we don't really value their experiences, or worse, that we're indifferent to them altogether. A change in perspective, from what can I get to how can I give. Shifting from this habit requires a conscious change in perspective. Instead of approaching relationships with a mindset of what can I get, start asking yourself, how can I give? Try reaching out with no agenda, simply to ask, how are you doing? Or, is there anything you need? Without realizing it, you'll start to build a deeper connection. It might feel awkward at first if you're not used to it, but people will notice the shift. They'll see that you're genuinely interested in them, and they'll start to feel valued as a person, not just as a means to an end. I remember trying this with a family member I hadn't been in close contact with. Usually I would call them when I needed advice or when I had a specific question about something I knew they were knowledgeable about. But this time I just called to check in, to talk about nothing in particular, and ask how they were doing. They seemed almost surprised at first, as if they were waiting for me to get to the real reason I was calling. But after a few moments, we were just chatting, laughing, and catching up, with no expectations or hidden motives. That simple conversation opened my eyes to how much I had missed, how much more fulfilling relationships could be when you simply showed up for the other person without any strings attached. Building the habit of genuine connection. It's not enough to reach out occasionally if we're going to fix this pattern. We need to make genuine connection a habit. Consider setting a reminder to reach out to people in your life just because. Maybe it's once a week, maybe once a month, but try to do it regularly. Make time to text a friend just to see how they're doing, or to call a family member to ask about their day. These small gestures go a long way in showing people that they're on your mind and that you value them as more than just someone who can do something for you. Relationships are like gardens. They need constant care, attention, and nurturing if we want them to thrive. It's easy to overlook this, especially in a fast-paced world where so much demands our time and attention. But if we're willing to put in the effort, to be more aware of our behaviors, and to genuinely show up for the people around us, we start to see real change, not just in how others view us, but in the depth and quality of our connections. If you've recognized some of these habits in yourself, remember that self-awareness is the first step to growth. Don't beat yourself up. We all have blind spots and fall into patterns without realizing it. The key is to make the choice to break these patterns and embrace new ways of connecting that feel honest, respectful, and truly supportive. When we begin reaching out for more than just our own needs, we're able to cultivate relationships that are rich in trust, warmth, and mutual respect. Think about the impact this can have on your life. Real relationships bring with them genuine joy, fulfillment, and a support system that helps you through both your successes and struggles. These aren't connections you look back on and regret. They're the ones you look back on with gratitude and a sense of purpose. Relationships built on respect, understanding, and selflessness end up being the ones that fill our lives with meaning and memories that last far beyond any temporary need or desire. So as you move forward, ask yourself, what kind of relationships do you want in your life? Do you want connections that only scratch the surface, or are you ready to build something deeper, something that will stand the test of time? By actively choosing to reach out without an agenda, to listen without judgment, and to care without expecting something in return, you're creating a network of people who genuinely value and appreciate you for who you are, not just what you can offer.